Hi, welcome to another Revenue Hub video series. Following the success of our AI series in the summer, please do check it out if you haven't seen them yet, we decided it would be great to get our expert partners' views once more. In the spirit of this time of year, we've asked them to predict what 2026 might have in store for the hotel industry. Now, through these videos, we are not inundating you with please subscribe and please like requests. You guys know what to do. But we would be interested to hear your thoughts on the predictions. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your predictions? Anyway, hope you enjoy it, and thanks again to our expert partners for taking part. Let's see what their predictions are. Hey, welcome to our 2026 Crystal Ball Predictions video series. Thanks for joining us. I know it's a very busy time, so I really appreciate you carving out a few moments to talk us through your predictions. But firstly, how are things with you guys as we're running up to the Christmas period? You all well?
We're doing really well, thank you, and staying busy, which is great.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to the holidays, of course, but yeah, things are good.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Good. Well, look, conscious of your time, let's dive straight in. So you got three predictions for us. Let's kick off. Prediction number one. What do you reckon's going to happen in next year?
Yeah, for my first prediction, I can't ignore AI and the impact that it will have on our industry next year. And I'm
Hmm.
sure you're hearing this from other people as well, right?
Indeed.
But so we're already seeing it in use today, and that's only going to increase whether or not we're prepared for it, right? So just think about it. Even if you're not using a platform like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini right now, the products or systems that you're using do use those systems,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so revenue management systems have had machine learning for about a decade already and
Hmm.
continue to evolve with better predictive analysis, automated forecasting, and pricing. Sales systems integrate AI to assist with reporting, sending contracts, automated emails, etc.
Hmm.
And so even labor management software in the hospitality industry, assists with productivity analysis, scheduling, and forecasting. So even if someone were opposed to using AI, like they just don't want to touch it or anything like that, they will still be using a form of AI if they're using any type of hospitality system.
Yeah.
So,
Inadvertently, they are into it.
they are, right. So for 2026, I mean, I think we'll continue to see more AI integration in our daily lives, and it's going to improve, I think, across the board. We're going to see better use of the tools, but also the tools themselves will continue to improve. So that's number one.
Do you think we will see the point where AI is more, how can I phrase this? More recognizable in terms of how it's being used, and hoteliers are starting to see it being used in a different way, i.e., how search is done, how they're being found as a hotel, as opposed to it being embedded in technology systems that they're using.
Yeah, I think so. Just to use your analogy of search, right? If somebody is looking to travel somewhere and they go to Google, Google has Gemini. And
Hmm.
so oftentimes the first response you see is an AI
That
generated
bit at the top.
response.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right, exactly. Before you get to the actual listings of the SEO type of listings, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, I think they'll see that. And again, I think the systems are embedding AI across the board. And so there maybe, the front desk PMS system is going to have, some automations built in. As soon as you check in a guest, the key will get created for you and the room assignment is being made and so on. I do think that that's going to happen and it's going to continue to improve, making everyone's jobs a little bit easier, which obviously is a risk, right? Because people say AI will replace
Sure.
positions.
Yeah.
And there is some of that, of course,
Yeah, and I think it's naive not to think. Now, it may be that you are not necessarily firing people or laying them off in one way, shape, or form, but I feel that there will be a delayed response, and it will
Mhm.
impact future hiring decisions. So I think if you look at pick a particular hotel now, and they could very honestly argue we are not using AI to replace people. But in 5 years' time, when people naturally leave that hotel as happens in any business, any walk of life, I
Hmm.
wonder if the number of people employed in that hotel is at the same headcount as it would have been today, and I envisage that it will be less. That's a conversation for another time.
Yeah.
Right, prediction number two. What have you got for us on prediction number two?
So for my second prediction, immigration friction and policies, especially here in the U.S., will
Oh,
have an
okay, that's
impact
an
on
interesting one to
travel.
go into. Okay, tell us about that. I
Yeah.
have not heard that anywhere in any discussion, so this will be very intriguing.
Right. So here in the US, we've seen a decline in international travel this year in 2025.
Hmm.
Part of that was because of policies, immigration policies. Some of it was more political.
Hmm.
For example, in Canada, there was a boycott of Canadians coming to the US
Yeah.
this year,
Read
right?
about that.
So
Yeah.
we've seen that. But even beyond that, just yesterday, our administration made some announcements about immigration policies that will, I think, affect travel inbound, making it more difficult for certain countries to obtain visas and
Hmm.
therefore come into the US,
Hmm.
right? So I think that that's going to continue, but it's not all doom and gloom. So I do think we'll have some positive bounces next year with international travel. Specifically, first we have the FIFA World Cup taking place in North America,
Yep.
and that's going to take place in several large cities, not just in the U.S. Of course, Canada and Mexico also have some games
Hmm.
that will be played, but the U.S. will have the majority of those games. So those particular markets, gateway cities, will see a bounce in inbound travel this summer. But of course, the caveat is how which teams perform well, which countries and teams perform well, and how they advance.
Yep.
So, it's hard to predict, at the end how that will all shake out. So that's the first part of that. But I also think that the Canadians will start to return to the U.S.
Hmm.
I think some might hold firm and still boycott, but I do think we'll see less of that and more Canadians will come back to the U.S. during the summer months like they did in prior years.
That makes sense.
And then, not just restricting ourselves to the US. I've seen data. We have hotels that we support in the Caribbean. So I've seen data that the Caribbean continues to be a hot market. And so, like the Dominican Republic, the Bahamas, even the Virgin Islands,
Hmm.
they should still see a lot of travel.
Right.
And of course, those countries see international travel, right? It's all
Yeah.
inbound from other countries.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Uh, you may not have the information to hand or no, but picking up on your point about Canada boycotting,
Mhm.
what's the do you see anything if you look at Europe or UK, if those numbers of inbound have been affected? Have you picked up any, maybe even not specific statistics, but any general vibes or trends that may see a slight downturn?
I haven't.
Hmm.
I think most Western countries like the UK, Germany, France, Western European countries, their travel numbers maybe have declined slightly, but I don't think it was because of anything going on politically. I think it was generally on the decline, as again, we talked about earlier, with after the pandemic, certain countries opened up more and restrictions lifted, and so travel sort of became global again, and it wasn't just to the US anymore, right? We saw that during the pandemic, our national parks system was, hit record highs. And a lot of that was American travelers, but also a lot of foreign travelers were coming
Hmm.
to the US during the pandemic because our restrictions were less
Yeah.
than in other countries. But as those restrictions lifted, the numbers sort of leveled off and maybe decreased a little. So I honestly think that that's more of a natural decline than
Okay.
anything else.
Okay, it's interesting because sometimes when when I read the national papers in the UK and then you see various discussions in news feeds that touch on Europe, there it's not an anti-US sentiment, but it's not maybe I get a feeling that it's more negative than positive. I guess also I was thinking about your comment about the World Cup and how, it's one of the biggest World Cups there has been in terms of the number of countries taking part. But again, visitors being able to get visas, I wonder if it's, you know, is there the local appetite to fill out the stadiums for lower, I'm gonna call it lower level teams, where their traveling supporters are going to find it hard to get visas to travel into the US. And then also I was thinking there aren't any issues that if I was, say, following a team and they were playing in Canada and then they were playing in Mexico and then they were playing in the US, my ability to travel in and out and between Mexico and the US or Canada or the US, there's not going to be any issues like that, is there? If I was coming in from outside, I wonder what that would be like from an accessibility point of view.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's a couple of things there. First is the affordability to be able to follow your team to those different venues and those different cities. Some folks might not be able to do that, right? They might be able to go to one game, pick the game that they really want to see their team play against and go to that game and then call it, go home
That's
and
it. Yeah,
watch the
yeah,
rest on TV.
yeah.
Others who are rabid fans and have the financial resources to be able to follow their team, I think they will. And I guess it depends, but I think for visas, like in the U.S., there are different types of visas.
Hmm.
Some are for 90 days, let's say for vacations
Okay.
or tourist visas
Yeah, yeah,
versus
yeah.
work visas, etc. So the visas that are going to be the most difficult to obtain, I think, are the ones that are like work visas or those that are here for a longer period of time. And listen, an expert
No,
on
no, no.
immigration
Sure.
policy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I do think, it's in our best interest, and I think the administration understands that as well, that, for tourist visas, especially for the World Cup, I think that will take place and it'll be fine.
Okay, that's interesting. I wonder how much the uncertainty of because I know we heard a few weeks ago that Trump was saying that, okay, well, if a particular city had issues or problems, he would just change the city that it was going to be played in,
Hmm.
and that seemed to be supported by the head of FIFA. And you're sitting there thinking, well, how can I book a hotel and a flight for a venue if someone just decides, oh, we're going to shift that venue for 6 weeks beforehand? So I think from our side of thinking our side of the water, if next year feels incredibly messy, the messaging that is coming out in terms of and I think it's such a great prediction. I didn't expect to be having this conversation, but looking at inbound, talking again about inbound travel, it just feels like oh, it's challenging to get in. If I was traveling to US, they're checking all my social media feeds. I've got to take everything off it. It feels like it's quite onerous coming in. The city could be chops and change. To a lot of people traveling in from the UK and Europe, discussions going on around football fans is, wow, it seems like this could be a real pain in the backside, and do we actually really bother with it? Anyhow, we
Okay.
won't get too deep into that one because that could take us down rabbit holes. Okay, prediction number 3. What have you got for us on that one?
Yeah, so it kind of ties back to what we were speaking about earlier with AI and labor, really. So
Hmm.
my last prediction is about labor,
Okay.
specifically the rising costs
Yeah.
and shortages of labor. And as I said, it ties back to AI. Excuse me. And AI and labor and automation are all connected, right?
Hmm.
And so we've seen a steep rise in labor costs since the pandemic, and I don't think that's about to change anytime soon. Same, as the labor shortages in the hospitality industry, that has been on the rise as well. It's been more and more difficult to find um, labor within our industry,
Yeah.
and so as a result of all that, I think what we're going to find is automation is going to continue. You were speaking about that when we were talking about AI, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
how certain positions will eventually sort of get phased out as people leave, because automation will take hold and do some of that work,
Hmm.
right? And so I think that that's going to continue. And I think also hotels are really smart about how they use different teams, like multitask teams, if you
Yeah.
will, who are trained and equipped to work in more than one place. In other words, when I started in this industry, if you worked at the front desk, you were trained how to work the front desk, check in, check out, cashiering, all that kind of stuff. But you didn't know any other disciplines within the hotel space. And these days, people are trained to be able to bounce around, especially in smaller operations. They might work the front desk, but then if they're busy in the restaurant, they can hop over to the restaurant. Maybe they're not going to become servers, but they can certainly help with um, uh, being a host or a hostess to help people get seated at the table, or
Yeah.
maybe they're in the back of the house helping with operational flow of some sort. So I think hotels will continue to do multitask teams where people are trained and equipped to work in more than one place. And then, of course, the automation that we talked about earlier. So all of that ties into just again, labor costs are going to continue to rise, and hoteliers have to be smart about how they can figure that out and use technology and mostly technology, but also just smart scheduling to help, overcome the shortages of staffing.
I think it's a very interesting area that you pick up on about how that evolution of the employee, and maybe to your point about finding it hard to find the skills, maybe the roles will become more interesting and more varied. And you're not sitting there, just chatting, wondering what I'm going to be doing next if there's no one coming in to check in, because you've got greater variety. Maybe that will make the role more interesting and therefore more appealing. And if you've got tools to help support, so maybe that might help recruitment again back into the industry as being a great industry to be part of. But sometimes the roles and the approach to it can look a little bit outdated, and this might change it and make it more appealing. Do you have like a
Possibly.
view
Yeah.
or a take on that?
Well, I think there will always be a need for specialists, and certain people that are skilled in a very, very, type of skill set. But you'll have what we're talking about, like that multi-tool sort generalist, right?
Hmm.
Who can be, we like to say, a jack of all trades,
Yeah,
but the saying that goes after that typically is a master of
master of none.
none.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna have
But
to drop that bit a bit.
yeah, I think so. But, honestly, I do think you're still going to have certain roles that are very specialized. Think of like a surgeon in a hospital,
Hmm.
right? And so a surgeon is very specialized, especially if they're like a brain surgeon or,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like your
thoracic
chef, for instance, I guess
cardiologist
they
or
could be
something.
they could be
Right.
very special. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes, but you'll have generalists working with that
yeah,
surgeon. And I
yeah,
think in the hospitality industry, like what you were saying, is exactly that. You could have someone who works in F&B and they could be tasked to work in the restaurant one day,
yeah,
banquets and catering in the next.
yeah,
If they're trained on being a bartender and they're licensed to be a bartender,
yeah,
then they could work at the bar and help, there.
yeah,
And even if they can't pour the drinks, they could still work the back of the bar to
yeah,
help the bartender relieve some of that pressure when they're really busy. Front office, front of house, some of those folks could also maybe work again in the back of the house. Maybe
yeah,
they're helping with scheduling or setting up the tools necessary for like the housekeeping department so that they can be more efficient
yeah,
in getting to guest rooms to clean the guest rooms when there's a big day of check-ins and check-outs. So I do think there's going to be that, and that's really what I was talking about, like as far as these multitask teams that are more generalists. They're specialists perhaps in one area, but they can be tasked in other areas.
yeah. Very interesting. Three very
Yeah.
interesting predictions. thank, thank you,
Yeah.
thank
Of
you for that. We will diarize to come back to you at the end of 20. We will speak again during the year, obviously,
course.
but we'll try and diarize to come back at the end of 2026 and see how those predictions have started to come to pass and how they may be refined in 2027. But for now, conscious of your time, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found the predictions discussion interesting. If you'd like to see any of our videos from our Summer AI series, here is a link to that playlist. And if you've missed any of the other prediction videos, here is a link to that playlist. And finally, can I genuinely just thank you all for watching or listening to our content? It really is appreciated, and we look forward to bringing you more in 2026. Thanks so much. Take care.